Hello and welcome to episode 242 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always joined by Evan Silva, and today is a glorious day. It is the first team-by-team podcast of the 2021 NFL season. Evan, how's it going?
Yeah, the first team-by-team podcast. There's about 5 or 6 matchups in there written up, arguing with Bengals fans who are delusional enough to believe that their team has a competent offensive line on Twitter. I mean, it feels like the season is here. I can smell it.
Nothing Evan enjoys more than battling with team fantasy, not fantasy Twitter, team Twitter. Yeah. On this podcast every week of the season, we will go team by team, looking back at each team's previous game and giving our biggest takeaways, our biggest fantasy takeaways. This week, since there are no games to look back on, we're going to give our biggest takeaway from camp/preseason for each team. Think it will be useful and actionable as we get set here for week 1. Before we get into it, 2 things. First, our in-season package is live. If you're going to play DFS, if you're going to play season-long seriously, if you're going to bet props, I honestly think what we are putting out there is the stone cold best way to put yourself in a position to win. We're doing hundreds of hours of work across our team so you can streamline down to what you actually need to know to win in these markets. So check out the content schedule on the site. And second, with week 1 gloriously here, we have a new sponsor for the Establish the Run podcast. Drum roll, please. The new sponsor is PrizePicks.com. You guys know me. You know I love player props. PrizePicks is essentially a DFS platform that specializes in player props. And I think 2 things that set them apart. One is that they have an incredible amount of players listed. Like, their menu is massive for every sport. And perhaps most importantly, they post their NFL props on Monday and Tuesday of each week, which is really, really early. Most books will not post their props until Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're posting a table each week to compare Establish the Run projections with PrizePicks prop lines to give you a sense of where we stand on their props. So check that out. If you want to give them a try this week, they have 100% instant deposit bonus and have some ridiculous can't lose lines for anyone who makes a deposit now. Use promo code ETR to get those deals, or use the link in the show notes. Again, promo code ETR at prizepicks.com for the instant bonus and the best deal. All right, Evan, let's get into it with the NFC. Biggest takeaway for me, we'll start with the Arizona Cardinals, was the rise of Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore was a 16th or 17th round pick early in the draft process, starts to rise. I've seen Rondale Moore go in the freaking 10th round at this point. And maybe that's a little bit too rich, especially if he doesn't have the full-time slot role. But at a minimum, what I learned in the preseason was there's going to be a conversation who plays slot in 3 wide receiver sets. Will it be Rondale? Will it be Christian Kirk? Will Kirk and AJ Green rotate on the outside? My initial guess, my hopeful guess, is that it's Rondale in the slot, but we're going to find out a lot on Sunday. But we certainly learned that Rondale is going to have a role, and a big role, I think, this preseason. What about for you on the Cardinals?
It's Rondale Moore, and I've seen him go in the 8th round. You know, there's that wide receiver cliff that starts to hit. You start to feel it really in like the 6th and 7th round. So guys that people like Marquez Callaway, Rondale Moore, they're starting to get pushed up into the 7th, 8th round in these late drafts that are taking place, like on FFPC right now. The Cardinals need a number 2 playmaker. Their offense was so heavily reliant on, dig routes to DeAndre Hopkins and comebacks to DeAndre Hopkins last year, all on the left side of the offense, on the left side of the offense, where he ran 78 or 80% of his routes. They need another guy who can make plays in other areas of the field. And I think that we're going to see manufactured touches for Rondale Moore. I mean, I think he's on the board immediately in week 1 as a potential, as a flex play and as a potential DFS play, depending on his price.
Yep. And we're not going to talk too much about DFS here. Obviously, Evan Wiggins and I will be on Friday night on Establish the Show. Our first round of projections are up, though. You can see how we have Rondale Moore projected there in the in-season package. Let's go to the Atlanta Falcons. Thing that I learned, man, I mean, I understand that they brought in Wayne Gallman. I understand Cordero Patterson has been running as number 2 running back. They're going to give Mike Davis every possible chance to hold this job and to be effective in this job. I don't know if he will be effective in the job. I don't know how long he will hold it 4, we didn't get a chance to talk about the Gallman signing too much, or actually at all on this podcast since last week, Evan. But to me, Mike Davis, I wasn't taking him in the 5th round. I wasn't taking him in the 6th round. I took him last night in my draft with my friends from home in the 7th round. I feel pretty good about that. What do you think about the Wayne Gallman signing and anything else on the Falcons that we learned?
Well, I think we have established that Quadri Allison stinks, and now the Falcons have established that Quadri Allison stinks by releasing him when he was supposedly their number 2 back. I think Wayne Gallman is an upgrade, but it just goes to show that there was so little competition. And this is really the main thing working in Mike Davis's favor, but it goes beyond that. I mean, he's a good receiving back. He's competent enough to get, what's blocked as a runner. I think he's going to be useful in fantasy as long as he holds up physically. Last year, if you remember, he started to wear down at the end of the season on just a massive Christian McCaffrey-like workload. I don't know if he's going to get that in Atlanta this year, but I think he's locked into a big-time role, and he was the quote-unquote dead zone running back that I like the most, especially when you could get him in the 6th round as your RB2 after hammering pass catchers up top.
Yep. Let's go to the Carolina Panthers. I mean, for me, the thing that we learned is that they really like Terrace Marshall. Shout out Sharon narrative between Joe Brady and Terrace Marshall from LSU. Not only did Terrace Marshall beat out David Moore, they cut David Moore. And I believe they gave David Moore like a 2-year, $3.5 million contract or something like that. Then they just cut him because Terrace Marshall just iced the dude. And so Terrace Marshall is going to open the season as the big slot for the Panthers on a Panthers team, which I think is going to play much, much, much better than people realize. Sam Darnold's going to play better than I think people realize right out of the gate. So easy one for me there. Terrace Marshall learned a lot about how well he can play and how well he's going to play at the NFL level, I think. What do you see about Carolina?
Yeah, it's such a big season for Sam Darnold, and it's such a big start to the season for Sam Darnold because it sets up perfectly for him. Can he execute on this super soft schedule in an advanced offensive scheme under Joe Brady with a big time 3 receiver set, an athletic tight end in Dan Arnold? Can he capitalize on this? It's a really big start to the season for him. One thing working against him, Cam Irving is going to start at left tackle for the Panthers. That's worrisome. But yeah, a lot on the line here for Sam Darnold.
Yep.
Should mention that the Panthers picked up Royce Freeman.
Yep.
So Chuba Hubbard no longer has a truly, direct path behind Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I do think Royce does not fit the profile of the offense, right? I think that if Christian McCaffrey were to get hurt, I think it would be mostly Chuba Hubbard, but I agree with you that now Royce is there to at least muddle things a bit. Chicago Bears. I know it's easy to say Justin Fields, and we've talked so much about Justin Fields. One thing I learned is that they have a lot of confidence in Damian Williams because Tariq Cohen, I don't even know if this dude's going to play this year. The news on Tariq Cohen has been really bad. And so I've been taking a ton of late round Damian Williams. I think he can have a smidge of standalone value. And then if something were to happen to David Montgomery, Damian Williams could be a 3-down back. So I like what I've seen from the setup for Damian Williams and kind of like the ideal little bit of standalone, a lot of value if David Montgomery were to go down. So I have my eye on that situation for sure, just because we learned that Tariq Cohen just simply isn't going to be ready to play for quite a while. Anything on the Bears, Evan? I didn't mention Justin Fields.
They picked up Rashad Perryman late in camp. And their depth at receiver is just pathetic behind Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney. Their next guy was Marquise Goodwin, Damiere Byrd. And so, Rashad Perryman flamed out pretty badly in Detroit with a lot of opportunity there. They gave him a decent little contract, above the minimum, and he couldn't earn a roster spot in Detroit in the worst, one of the worst wide receiver cores I've ever seen entering week 1. So there's downside there, but he does give them another vertical threat if something happens to Darnell Mooney.
Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys. And I think what we learned is that the health of Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott are nothing to worry about. I don't know if you guys watched Hard Knocks. I don't know if you've seen some of the videos. Amari Cooper does not look like he has anything to worry about with his foot or ankle or any other injuries. Amari Cooper is out there just shredding dudes with his route running. Dak also, as we talked about, Dak's health with a shoulder thing Jay Glazer came out and said that the shoulder was going to be fine, and it was as if the market didn't believe him. I mean, I wasn't high on Dak in the 6th round, but getting Dak in the 8th round is just a stone cold steal. And so I think Dak's health is fine. I don't know how well they're going to play Thursday night against the Bucs. I'm actually kind of skeptical they're going to play very well on Thursday night, but I think generally speaking, Amari and Dak are healthy and going to be fine. What about Dallas for you, Evan?
Yeah, the Cowboys have had like a mini COVID breakout here at the end of training camp. Zach Martin was one of the guys that got it. Their stud right guard. And at right tackle, La'el Collins missed a bunch of training camp time due to stingers. Now he practiced fully on Monday, so that's a good sign, but that's also an injury that can like creep back up. So that's a situation to monitor. They're pretty inexperienced at center with Tyler Biadasz, and Tyron Smith is not a guy at left tackle that has held up physically really in a while. So their offensive line is, it's already kind of starting to show some cracks. But I think it's going to show a lot of cracks on Thursday night against Tampa Bay. But that's a situation we'll continue to monitor. And I know we're not supposed to talk about the upcoming games as much, but I think that this is a game where they should play matchup based offense, and they should fire up Tony Pollard for like 40% of the snaps and feed him like 6 targets and get the ball away from, don't run the ball up the gut against Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh for God's sake. I mean, don't do that.
There's a big assumption of rational coaching there. We'll see. In week 1, after Zeke works so hard to get healthy, it's hard for me to see them going to Pollard, but
no, it's not going to happen. I'm just saying it would be fun.
By the way, Evan's matchup column for Dallas and Tampa is up on the site, and we'll have a showdown show, likely with myself, Cody, and Leone ahead of the showdown slate. We'll have projections and ownership up for that on Wednesday night, Thursday morning as well. Let's go to the Detroit Lions. I mean, I haven't already mentioned it. We learned that Brashad Perriman can't beat out Khalif Raymond and Quintez Cephas, and they're going to go into the season with a wide receiver core of Tyrell Williams and Khalif Raymond on the outside with Cephas backing him up, and Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot. And so, I think DeAndre Swift, there's gotten some good news on his health lately. I'd be surprised if Swift and Hawkinson weren't the leaders in targets on this team. It's just a weird setup for a team in today's NFL. And I was thinking their lines were really good, both their lines, offensive, defensive line. And then I started reading Thorne's stuff, and Thorne, he has him 10th in the offensive line and 28th in defensive pass rush, and so I think I think the Lions are a lot better than the Texans, but they're still really bad. And so we'll see how it goes in week 1 against the 49ers. But man, the talent on this team is just really, really low. What'd you see out of the Lions this preseason?
Well, I was just reading Dave Burkett's article, a longtime Detroit Free Press beat writer for the Lions, his article about Dan Campbell saying is locking in DeAndre Swift, that he's going to be ready for week 1. But he used these quotes. He said that Dave Burkett did. He said that Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift are going to split the backfield, essentially evenly, and that Jamal Williams is going to play on most third downs. Now, he did qualify that DeAndre Swift is going to be the team's primary receiving back, but I don't know that he's going to be playing on all third downs. I think that it sounds like Jamal Williams, because of his Jamal Williams just does things that coaches love. Yeah. We've talked about this a lot. He pass blocks. He doesn't fumble. And I think he had 0 fumbles in his entire college career. Yeah. He does these things that coaches love, and he's going to see the field quite a bit.
Yep. It's like the Malcolm Brown thing with the Dolphins. Obviously he's not nearly as good as Myles Gaskin, but Malcolm Brown does things that coaches love also. Green Bay Packers. I was struggling to come away with a takeaway for the Packers. I guess my biggest takeaway is that Marquez Valdez-Scantling reportedly had a really good camp. I don't know that that's going to translate to a lot of targets for Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think anything more than 3 to 5 per game would surprise me. Shout out to AJ Dillon, though. AJ Dillon, our buddy from the draft. If you guys didn't watch the draft, at least go back on YouTube, find the AJ Dillon draft and watch the first, 5 or 10 minutes. AJ Dillon is a good dude, and I hope he has a really, really good season. I didn't have much on the Packers, though. Anything for you on the Packers?
No, just that I think Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to come out playing a lot of snaps for them. And, he's always been an inconsistent player. I think he's going to mix in some spike weeks. He's going to be somebody you kind of look at as an interesting DFS dart throw. But I think he's going to, just because his skill set is so unique as compared to the rest of the Green, they need his vertical speed.
Yep. Let's go to the Los Angeles Rams. I was excited about Darrell Henderson. Given the package that they gave up to get Sony Michel, and given how well Sony Michel played last year, I'm a little worried that goal line work is going to end up going to Sony Michel and maybe a decent amount of base work too. And so, I have a bunch of Darrell Henderson in best ball in like the 5th round and stuff like that from the immediate aftermath of Cam Akers' injury. I'm getting a little bit worried about it now. So that would be my biggest takeaway, that I think they're going to go to some type of timeshare between Sony and Darrell Henderson. What'd you see out of the Rams?
Yeah, in this live draft that I did at this restaurant down the street, Daigle was making fun of me for drafting Sony Michel like in the 8th round of a 14-team league. I don't think that that's a bad pick. You got a guy that has a chance to lead the Rams in rushing TDs, potentially carries. Be the lead back in probably a top 12 at worst offense, possibly like top 8 offense. I think Sony Michel is a good pick.
Okay. Let's go to the Vikings. And this one hurt. We talked about the Irv Smith injury a little bit last week, but now we know he's done for the season. I mean, they're really thin at playmaker. Their number 3 wide receiver is going to be like D.D. Westbrook or something like that. It's a mess. And I think they were planning on using Irv as number 3 wide receiver, some leaving Tyler Conklin in line. Now they're going to have to ask a ton out of Tyler Conklin. They add Chris Herndon. They have Brandon Dillon there as well. I don't know how much those guys can give them. Any takes on the fallout from the Irv injury for you, and anything else on the Vikings?
Well, I think that it kind of reinforces how narrow the target distribution for, in Minnesota is, with Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson just like way up at the top. There's really not very much competition for them. At the same time, I kind of think that Tyler Conklin, in any of these tight end premium leagues, like he should be rostered in all of them. He could end up playing a ton of snaps. He's a 70th percentile athlete. He had a decent receiving track record in college, and he had 40 or more yards in 3 of the Vikings' final 4 games. So, I mean, there's something to be had there. I think that he's going to be worth consideration.
In those final 4 games when Kyle Rudolph was out last year, Tyler Conklin had a target share around 13-14%, which is pretty solid for like a late round tight end. I mean, a good tight end might get 18, 19, 20%. Obviously, the Waller and the Kelsey types are up above that. But yeah, I mean, I think that Tyler Conklin is definitely fine as a late round dart throw now for sure. New Orleans, I mean, there's been so much going on with New Orleans. I guess the takeaway for me is, I need to own that I was too low on Alvin Kamara for much of the summer, the way it ran out for Alvin Kamara with Michael Thomas getting hurt, Jameis Winston winning the job, Latavius, the team going south or souring on Latavius are all good things for Alvin Kamara. And at this point, I mean, it's hard to argue with Alvin Kamara as a number 3 overall pick in fantasy drafts. I obviously was low on him and did not get much Alvin Kamara, or hardly any, until maybe the last week, 10 days when this run out happened. But there's been other stuff going on with the Saints too. Jameis obviously winning the job. Marquez Callaway coming out of nowhere to emerge as the number 1 wideout for this team. Takeaways on the Saints heading into the season.
Yeah, and Jameis obviously, won the starting job, and he earned it. I mean, he showed up. I've never seen him look that in shape. He got the LASIK surgery. He played really well in the preseason. He showed obvious rapport with Marquez Callaway, but I still think that they're going to use Taysom Hill a decent amount. I mean, they don't have playmakers beyond Alvin Kamara and maybe Marquez Callaway. They're going to need to manufacture offense, and they can do that with Taysom Hill.
Yeah, for sure. Giants takeaway for me, it was pretty clear. Under promise and over deliver with Saquon Barkley's health. They went around telling the media, telling anybody who will listen, well, Saquon might sit out. We don't know. We don't know if he's going to play. We're taking it one day at a time. In the end, dude had 11 months plus to recover from an ACL and looks like he's going to be perfectly fine. Now, may he be eased in a little bit at the beginning of the season, especially because I believe they play the Thursday night game in week 2. So he only have 4 days rest. Yeah, I think he could be eased in a little bit. But generally speaking, I think the health concerns on Saquon were blown. That's my takeaway on the Giants. I could go on about the mess they made with Kadarius Toney, but that's a story for another day. He's not going to be too relevant, at least early in this season. Takeaways for you on the Giants, Evan?
Well, we had a decent little chat in the Discord where there's a lot of people in there having discussion. I think that definitely if you're an ETR subscriber, you should jump in the Discord. Someone brought up that Sterling Shepard might be a little bit underrated, and he has had a positive run out here throughout training camp. Evan Ingram is not going to be playing, indefinitely. Kenny Golladay barely practiced in training camp. Same thing for Kadarius Toney, and Kadarius Toney might come out the gates only being like a kick returner.
Yep.
And then if you read the Giants beat writers, and Giants, beat writers in general, they're not projection people. You have to take all of their like statistical projections with a big grain of salt. But if you read them, they're predicting that Sterling Shepard is going to lead this team in catches, and that should surprise no one. And this is a guy that, in recent drafts, I've seen him going in like the 16th, 17th round. And I'm like, that's a good pick there. That's a really, really good pick for a guy that could catch 80 balls this season. That would not surprise me. And someone in the Discord brought up that he was underrated, and I agree wholeheartedly. I was too low on him in the top 150. I think that he should have been in the top 150.
Yep. Okay. Eagles, as we go down I-95, Devonta Smith is the story for me. Everybody around the Eagles thinks that Devonta Smith is going to lead this team in catches and targets this year. Devonta Smith, of course, the underweight but highly, highly, highly productive rookie out of Alabama. A little bit of shower narrative with Jalen Hurts going on there as well. And competition for targets, they have a lot of guys. They have Quez Watkins, Ertz is still there, Goddard, Greg Ward's still going to play, Jalen Reagor. But I think Devonta Smith is the guy that everybody is most excited about. And I'm really excited to see Devonta Smith go up against this Falcons secondary on Sunday. We'll talk about that more on Friday night. But I think Devonta Smith has a chance to surprise people for sure this year. What do you got on the Eagles, Evan?
Well, there was at one point, like early on, or at least entering training camp, where it looked like the Eagles had like 5 viable running backs. And then it looked like they might keep 4. They wound up only keeping 3. And I think that is good news for Miles Sanders. Now, the other guys that they kept, Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell, better receiving backs than Miles Sanders. But I don't think that we ever had big reception hopes for Miles Sanders this year, because he's playing in the same backfield as a dual threat quarterback who's in Jalen Hurts, who's more likely to take off than to check down. But I think that Miles Sanders is going to dominate carries, and have no problem doing that in what I think has a chance to be a really strong rushing attack. Nick Sirianni had really strong rushing attacks in Indianapolis. This offensive line looks good. Somehow, some way they made it through training camp without an offensive line injury. When was the last time that happened for the Eagles? But Miles Sanders, I know that you were on him as like a 4th round pick or somewhere in there.
You could get him in the 5th round a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that people should be pleased with the way that turned out for him.
San Francisco 49ers, man. And I'm worried because obviously I have a lot of Trey Lance, and given the timing of this finger injury he had, given that maybe he looked a little raw at times in the preseason, given that he didn't really rush, and we talked about this, he didn't tuck and run in the preseason hardly at all, while Justin Fields did. And I'm a little worried now that 49ers going to go off to a hot start. Jimmy G's going to stay in there. It's going to be, some maybe small package for Trey Lance each week. That scares me a little bit. So in recent drafts, I've definitely been taking Fields over Trey Lance. I've obviously been taking Jalen Hurts over Trey Lance. Like, you can, I think, make a case now maybe for like guys like Tannehill ahead of Trey Lance too, which is tough because, I have a ton of Trey Lance already, but it's kind of playing out how the haters expected, where maybe Jimmy G gets in there to start and now Jimmy G wins some games. Next thing you know, they're 6-1, and how can you bench Jimmy G at that point? So anything on the 49ers?
Man, so these haters, they hated Trey Lance and they love Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, they just hate giving the job to any rookie. That's what they hate.
Yeah, right. It's Jimmy Garoppolo just isn't very good. He's just not very good. He did not play well when he was healthy last year. The thing is that he's set up for success. Right. He's got Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, just these run after catch monsters. and a pretty good offensive line and a great scheme and a great schedule. But man, the talent gap is still so lopsided in Trey Lance's favor. I'm staying on the optimistic side. I still think we're going to see Trey Lance starting before week 6.
Okay, I hope you're right. Seattle, obvious big takeaway is all this Shane Waldron talk. We're going to play fast. We're going to get the ball out of Russ's hands quickly. We're going to go throw short and let our players make plays instead of Russ run around and chuck it deep to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett every time. If DK Metcalf can execute on that, I know about the 3-cone time. I know people say he has no hip swivel or whatever. If DK Metcalf can add slants, comebacks, whatever else, quick hitters, bubble screens to his repertoire, he's going to go absolutely nuclear. I think that DK Metcalf and Justin Jefferson definitely have a chance to both be better than DeAndre Hopkins this year. I know that DeAndre Hopkins has been going ahead of them, but the ceiling on DK Metcalf is just absolutely massive. And so I'm excited about what Shane Waldron and Pete Carroll are saying. I'm excited to see if they follow through with it for the whole year. Evan, anything on Seattle?
Yeah, I don't even think that DK Metcalf needs to vastly increase his route repertoire. He had over 1,300 yards last year in a season where, in the back half, like his quarterback played poorly. And just kind of everything went wrong for Seattle's offense. And I think that we're going to see a steadier season from Seattle's passing offense this year. And we're going to see more plays out of them if Shane Waldron is able to execute on, what his plans are. And I think that he will. I think that DK Metcalf is a candidate to lead the NFL in receiving yards, receiving scores. And he's my favorite 2nd-round draft pick.
Also, I wanted to add in that I found out this preseason that the Bible narrative is in effect between Russ Wilson and Gerald Everett. Important nugget there.
Wow.
Yep. Tampa Bay Bucks. Gio, my God, they signed Gio and they just immediately give him a really big role with Tom Brady. Gio was in 100% of the 3rd down snaps in the preseason with Tom Brady. I think that's going to carry over. And I know Gio got banged up a little bit. I think he's going to be fine for week 1, but we'll see. But man, Gio just having this 3rd down role, pass down role, if they get into 2-minute offense, which Tom Brady loves to be in, Gio is going to be out there, not Ronald Jones, not Lenny Fournette. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I learned for sure. It's just going to be, they're going to play all 3 backs. And it's going to be a real headache, I think, for fantasy players, even though it's going to be an extremely, extremely productive offense. What do you see out of the Bucs?
Well, the final camp reports out of Tampa Bay where the Antonio Brown was just absolutely killing it. And I know he's 32, against the age model, didn't look all that great and comfortable last year down the stretch. Although I think he played, in terms of fantasy, he wasn't that bad. He was like wide receiver 2/3. He earned a significant target share right off the bat. He was coming in cold, mid-season. And now with the full training camp, and apparently he was just crushing it. If you're doing drafts late, he's somebody that I'm willing to reach to get. I have 2 more FFPC main event drafts to do. I'm going to try to get him in both of them. He's someone that I'm willing to reach around to get.
Antonio Brown with his head on straight. And that's one thing that you can take away from the preseason. I haven't heard anything off field about Antonio Brown. And that kind of surprised me. Like, he's always stirring up something. I have not heard one peep about Antonio Brown. Head seems to be screwed on straight. And targets per route run, Antonio Brown smashed Mike Evans and Chris Godwin last year from Tom Brady in targets per route run. Tom Brady loves throwing to this dude. Had the roommate narrative. When he got down there, Antonio Brown was looking for somewhere to stay. Tom Brady invites him into his home with his kids. You don't do that for someone you're not going to throw the ball to.
I noticed that his yardage prop on Thursday night, 50.5.
Yeah.
Overs club, right?
Okay. You're the king of the overs club. I'm still looking at props. We're gonna have some up soon.
All right.
Last team in the NFC, Washington Football Team. Takeaway from you was disappointing, man. Curtis Samuel, this groin injury, 3 months. Yeah. 3 months. I don't know what happened to this dude's groin. He wasn't on the team for 3 months. I can't rely on this guy. I can't start him in season long. I'm definitely not playing him in DFS. Like, I think Curtis Samuel, he doesn't even sound like he's 100% still. And it's been more than 3 months since he hurt his groin. I think it's pretty disappointing. Exciting for De'Ami Brown, but disappointing for Curtis Samuel. What do you see on the Washington football team?
Yeah, unless they run out Cam Sims for, they've done that before. Like they run out Cam Sims for like 100% of the snaps. I don't know. I think it's good news for Terry McLaurin. Ryan Fitzpatrick will rip it downfield to Terry McLaurin. I don't know. I just got done writing this matchups column, and I'm kind of worried that the Chargers just stick Derwin James on Logan Thomas the entire game. But I don't know how they're going to deal with Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, I think, he kind of didn't generate a ton of buzz throughout the process, but great pick.
Yeah, I was taking him middle of the third round, and the third round a ton for me on Terry McLaurin. All right. That's going to do it for the first NFC Team by Team podcast of the 2021 NFL season. Reminder, again, if you do not have your in-season package yet, you need it because you need to read Silva's matchups column. You need the projections, you need the ownership projections, and you need our Friday night and Saturday show on top of everything else. For producer Luke, for Evan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.